Hi, Alan Stratton from Woodturning. For this week's project, let's explore a little bit more into segmented turning. So the difference in this case is that there's a pattern in each ring, and that then had to be glued up in an arrangement. And you have to be careful to get them in the right sequence and the right order, and I blew it and had to fix one. So there's a little fix in here that may be educational, but this is of maple and mesquite, and I think it turned out quite nice. So let's turn this segmented vase.
A wedgie sled is the biggest resource to the goal of accurate segment angles. I have made mine a little longer than the internet specs. Technically, I can use the inner surface of the arms, but practically, I can hold the wood better against the force of the saw blade if I use the forward surfaces of each arm. For now, I need 9 segments of maple and 3 of mesquite for most rings. Then I sand each segment. With 15 rings for this project, I need to get moving. Technically, I should be able to glue an entire ring at once. However, that requires perfection in preparing wood, cutting without crumbs of wood, exact lengths despite pressure from hands, and many more things. So I prefer to glue individual segments together using a rub joint technique I learned from a pattern maker. Since I have a pattern, I have to be careful in the order. I glue pairs together, rubbing and squeezing them together until the glue starts to grab. Then set them on parchment paper and stack the third segment for the quarter ring set on top. By the time I finish the 4 pairs, I can use the same technique to glue the third segment to the other 2 of each set. Then, if I'm pushing the glue time, I can glue the sets together into half rings. I usually let the halves dry and harden more while I prepare other rings. The next step is a bit rougher, and I want the glue to be dry for at least 30 minutes. At the sander, I mark wetness lines on the ends so I can tell when they have been completely sanded. Then a quick sand of the back side of the half ring to flatten it a bit more. Finally, sand the ends of each half ring until the wetness lines are gone. Then they mate together perfectly. Afterwards, use the rub technique again to glue the halves together. All 15 rings are now glued and ready to be sanded to a uniform thickness. Since I have a drum sander, I like to do this for all rings at once rather than on the lathe. After sanding, my ring stack is a bit shorter and ready to start gluing them into the final vessel. I have glued a piece of chipboard to a faceplate to be a waste block for the top section of the vase and glued the top ring already. Now I am adding the next lower ring. My Longworth chuck mounted to a live center works great to center the next ring. Then let it dry at least 10 minutes in my still cool shop. Now ring number 12, I believe, anyway, the next ring down from the top. I now have to pay attention to my segment patterns. While that glue hardens a bit more, I have my base ring mounted to a faceplate, and I need to glue ring number 2 to it. However, I double and triple check to make sure my spiral pattern agrees with the top section. While that glue hardens more, I take the opportunity to trim some from the top section. This includes the narrow section just under the rim. After the points of the ring are off, the wood comes off in nice streams of shavings from the continuous side grain. Then glue on the next lower ring in the top section. While that dries, I'm adding rings to the bottom section. At this time, I'm realizing that I made an error in ring number 2. My pattern looks weird. One good thing about segmented work is the possibility to cut out a bad section, replace it, blend it, and have it appear as if nothing went wrong. So I glued up another ring, correctly this time. Now I have glued on another faceplate to the top of the bottom section. With that secured, I can split the bad ring. Then by mounting both sections, I trim all vestiges of the bad ring. Then glue on the replacement ring, making sure the pattern continues as it should. Then glue on the upper section that I parted off earlier to the replaced ring. While that glue dries, I can glue the final ring to the top section of the vase. Now I can glue up the midsection rings pretty much the same way. By the way, when gluing on rings, I feel that I only need to allow 5 to 10 minutes to let the glue set before being able to glue on the next one or remove it so that I can work on another section. No, the glue is not dry nor solid. It will not take much pressure yet. For other unsupported work, I want the glue to dry at least 1 hour. Before final turning, I want the glue to dry overnight. Remember that ring I replaced? The glue is now dry and I can trim it back to blend into the original rings. Then part off the waste faceplate. That chipboard is nasty. Then trim the inside also before removing all traces of the temporary waste block. Finally, I can glue the midsection to the repaired bottom section. I let this dry overnight. The best approach is a shear cut with my large bowl gouge. The cutting edge is nearly perpendicular to the spinning wood. For the inside cleanup, I went to the opposite side of the lathe to get a good angle with a round carbide tool. Back to the exterior, I'm pressing the top section to the bottom and midsection with only pressure from the live center. This gives me an opportunity to blend the overall shape together, and then with that established, I can check and true up the wall thickness before a final glue up. Good night while this vase dries. The vase is starting to look real. With it hanging a long way out from the chuck, I have mounted my DIY steady rest to provide some additional support. I had to cut back the outer wood near the wheel so that the wheels could ride in the narrow neck. Now I need to get rid of the temporary particle board faceplate. With a parting tool, I am first cutting a diagonal that should be inside the ring and outside the threaded portion of the faceplate. Then another parting cut to remove most of the remaining particle board. Now to start refining the rim with a spindle gouge. This particle board and mesquite have dulled my gouge, and I take a short break to sharpen the gouge. It needs it. A little more work and the neck feels great. I trust my fingers more than my eyes. And gentle cuts here. The remaining wood on the faceplate turns out to be perfect to provide tailstock support on the revolving live center. For the concave portion of the neck, I chose a round carbide cutter to better follow the curve. Then refine the convex portion with shear cuts with a bowl gouge. After a thorough sanding inside and out, I am applying walnut oil to bring out the color and grain. This segmented spiral vase has turned out great. I removed the mistake so there is no distracting change-up in the spiral. If you have not tried segmenting turning, you are missing out. Please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe on my website, and tell your friends. I appreciate your comments and questions. Every week I make a new wood turning video and add it to my website. Please wear your full face shield for safety anytime the lathe is running. I will see you next week with another wood turning video. Be wise in these COVID times, get your shots, and count your blessings.